developing a mental picture. In observing the photographer sitting quietly in his developing room, we see that occasionally he lifts his picture carefully from the pan in which it is being bathed, examines it, and dips it back again and again in the chemical solution, and so watches the orderly progress of its outward development. His action suggests to us the fact that we will have this same privilege of reviewing our outwardly developing picture. In our quiet retreat, our darkened silence room, we will find occasion to meditate upon our picture, bringing it before us for review as a whole. While we speak of our silence room for this purpose, let us remember always that our true silence room and developing room into which we are to enter is in that place in the everywhere of subconsciousness where our picture will be placed, and in every part of that everywhere to which our picture may extend. If our minds are thoroughly trained in the habit of inhibiting objective thinking, then we will be able to go into the silence of this mental developing room of subconsciousness, regardless of where we may happen to be, while waiting at the station for a train, while motoring, while afoot on the road or in the woods, or awake in bed, or even while attending to the routine of business, shop or household affairs. If we say such persons are absent-minded, this is true. They are absent mentally in an objective sense, even while moving about in street, factory, business, or amidst any community. They are entirely oblivious to all outward surroundings and activities because they place themselves in a subjective condition where they can dwell and be with their cherished thought mentally. This may or may not be an extreme suggested method of keeping watch over our developing picture, yet it shows that our whole thinking is fixed upon our sunken thought. We show a certain loyalty to it, and loyalty is that quality which prompts a person to be true to the thing he undertakes. This reviewing time, when we enter mentally into the great chemical laboratory and developing region of our subconsciousness, to look at our mental picture, ought to be made a time of keen alertness and watchfulness. We ought to observe every friend who comes to us, examine every seemingly chance word, every invitation, every letter, every circumstance, every occasion, everything, in fact, which enters into and becomes a part of our daily work, play, and life, since these are the separate and detached, yet integral parts unknown to us at that time, which will combine to bring about our picture as a whole. In this way, we are able consciously to cooperate in the developing process. We can facilitate it, and when we ourselves move consciously in the directions which become apparent to us, our understanding thought will become not only a center of attraction, drawing all things toward it, but a positive mentative force moving in the direction of our developing picture, a force which will express itself in enthusiasm, interest, attention, joy, effort, and work. If these supreme moving elements are not present in visualizing, then our concepts remain mere dreams, and divine as they may be, they hardly can be expected to come into realization on the physical plane. By saying that we must move in the direction of our developing picture, it is also meant that everything which we do, everything which we think or say must at this time be made to suggest or relate itself to the outwardly finished picture of whatever we are visualizing. We must say, I will read this book because it may show me the way to get the $10,000 I need, or this will make a dandy desk for my business, or I'm going to buy these curtains so I will have them for my home. As we have already said, we must make the mental reality of our developing thought so clear to our consciousness again and again during the intervals of its review in our minds that we will unconsciously and subjectively convey our thought to all other minds subjectively conditioned and with whom we come in contact, since this is one of the avenues of its outworking. We must remember that out of ourselves, our thought has come, so that we are the very heart, the very centre, the magnetized nucleus, and the starting point of the projected thought which is in process of developing. Through us, our imaged thought which is sent forth assumes the nature of a fiat, enclothing itself in positive statements such as those we have just mentioned, and these statements appear from our own declarative lips as the first outward evidence of the existence of the yet scarcely outwardly observed picture in our minds. Following our declarative words, then our clothes, our inclinations, our studies, our pastimes, all will begin to accommodate themselves in the direction of our developing thought, so that we will begin to wear the tie and broad-brimmed hat of the artist before we ever obtain the money to attend an art school. We will frequent automobile sales rooms before even we have the requisite money to buy the auto. We will read up books on travel before the thought of travelling has worked itself out into a possibility. And we will spend our hours of pastime among machinery or among men who represent the thought of the business or the trade which is forming itself subconsciously within us. And in deliberate visualizing, as we move thus consciously in the direction of our developing understanding, we will find that our minds, carnate and incarnate, forces visible and invisible, or persons attuned to our thought by virtue of entertaining a corresponding thought of their own, will unconsciously or consciously move into the magnetic circle of our thought. They will fit themselves into and assist in its fulfillment, as we are caused correspondingly to fit into and assist in the fulfillment of their own. In true visualizing, we are drawn into the lives of others as others are drawn into our lives. Our thought is the magnetized center, but in its attraction, it draws or should draw those only to whom in turn it is attracted and whose purpose in turn it may serve. This should be part of our imaged thought at all times. It should be part of the light of true understanding of which our thought is composed, since in this is contained not only the mental ethics of visualizing, but the success of our work as well. Finally, let us not forget here that while our imaged thought launched forth into the ocean of the very universe of subjective consciousness finds every corresponding friendly force, carnate and incarnate, visible and invisible, attracted to it, yet does it also meet at every turn those forces, visible and invisible, which are its opposite in nature, and which are ready on every occasion to exercise no inconsiderable activity and influence against the orderly and natural development of that which we seek to have become a part of our outward lives. These forces may not always be opposing forces, but sometimes dominating, self-seeking forces. It is well to observe that primitive minds of this type are stronger in any mental contest for the possession of any object in mind based upon a material basis, and almost inevitably overcome or come over the minds of a higher and more spiritual type. This is because the more elemental type of mind operates from the basis of pure desire or passion, and consequently is a more vitalized and positive unit in the material direction in which it exerts itself. We see this so often displayed in the instance of the meek, the harmless and innocent, who are irresistibly drawn at times into the scheme and picture of the designing, the worldly, the selfish and carnal mind. The innocent drove among us is observed moving irresistibly in the direction of the fanged serpent, and the lamb into the very jaws of the devouring tiger. It seems to be the sacrificial mental tragedy of our upward and outward development, and will be so until the time when we can warn, protect and defend ourselves and others by the more powerful dissolving white light of the spirit against the consciousness and unconscious mental processes of those who, for the time, attempt to neutralize, suspend and dissolve our own outwardly forming picture, and seek to cause us to step into and serve the purpose of their own. Somewhat later, we will learn just how to generate this white light so that it becomes possible to sublimate our projected thought of what we want to be or do or have, so illumine and radiate it that it becomes not only an enlightened thought, but an enlightening thought, containing within itself the white light of the higher form of understanding, not only to guide our thought on its outward course, but to enlighten and make bright all that through which it moves, dispelling darkness and that which is part of the darkness. When this is done, we will find our developing picture shaping itself without interruption and in an orderly and logical manner, each time that we lift it, so to speak, from its chemical bath. We will find some further sign of development, some further trace of its outward appearance. We will find our understanding as a whole shaping itself into an increasingly orderly and beautiful arrangement of events, incidents and occasions, following one another in uninterrupted logical sequence, and all of them transpiring for the purpose of bringing the good desire of our hearts nearer and nearer to the point of fulfillment in our outward lives. Let us remember that in protecting ourselves against the subtle interference of other minds, we must in turn hold, inviolate, the principle never to include another mind in formulating and developing our own thought picture. No matter how self-justified we may feel or how good our intentions, unless we have the full and willing consent of that other mind. This consideration not only is an ethical and moral one in our visualizing work, but a scientific one as well. A photographer would not make bold to incorporate as part of his photograph someone who objected or refused to give his or her consent to be taken as a part of his picture. Newspaper photographers, devoid of any considerations of this kind, and who have surreptitiously sought by all kinds of questionable methods to violate the rights of another in this sense, have brought down the wrath of the offended person and sometimes a libel suit. In visualizing, it becomes a question not of incorporating another person, but another mind or part of another mind, and willing or unsuspectingly to become part of our own, literally attempting in this manner to imprison, deprive, if not to rob the other mind of its individual freedom of action and expression. This may be done quite innocently, though nonetheless impermissibly by us. A mother, let us say, with the best of intentions, may attempt to formulate a picture relating to her child, a picture which assumes to regulate their outward conduct according to her fixed ideas. A lover may seek to visualize the other into his or her life to a point where it becomes a mentally compulsory force, depriving the other of free action. A woman may seek to visualize a certain person as a husband, or a man may seek to visualize a certain person as his wife. But the moment we do this without the consent of the other mind, we tamper with an independent intelligence which normally is also formulating and outpicturing itself along its own God-given lines of independent action and understanding, probably in an entirely different or opposite direction. And since no two unlike thought images can associate or relate themselves subjectively, an impasse results, causing mental stress, inharmony, and unhappiness to both minds, or the involuntary surrender temporarily of the one understanding to the other. In every instance, it is criminal and self-destructive of the mind which undertakes to misuse the visualizing power in this sense, and in deliberate cases, the power of imaging and seeing is known to have been altogether lost, bringing about a mental blindness in which no outpicturing at all becomes possible.